to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay. My name is host Mike Jokum. With me back in the second chair is Jess Baker, and joining us for the first time is Wildfire Sports blogger Mike Silver. Mike, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Great, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I'm an honor to be here.
Sure, no problem. Jess, how is everything in sunny Florida?
Sunny Florida's kind of rainy, but I'm super jealous of you guys being in Indy.
Yeah, you know, it's been, for the most part, a pretty fun week. I think today was actually a little bit of a bummer. You know, everybody went out early because it didn't rain, as Robert Wickens said in his post press conference, and then used up all their tires. So by the time the afternoon rolled around and it didn't rain, there wasn't really a whole much of anything going on. You know, the last hour, I think, Mike, what did we see? Graham Rahal and Rossi, and that's pretty much it?
Pretty much.
So where should we get started? I guess we'll start with a slightly non-500 announcement coming out of completely left field, and actually one of our listeners at Colin_R Taylor, if I got his Twitter handle correct, I'm not looking at Twitter right now, saw a Haas F1 test driver, Santino Ferrucci, hopefully I got his name right, coming out of the Dale Coyne garage, and then it was announced this afternoon that he'll be racing the doubleheader in Detroit weekend. Talk about left field. I think this, guys, I don't know if you agree or disagree, is more out of left field than Alfonso Celis racing in Road America for Juncos in a month or so.
So I have said it before, and I'm going to say it again. This is the year of me going, who? So yet again, we've got another one. I think it's going to be interesting. I don't know that it's the right choice for him to play, I don't know, driver bingo in the sea. I don't know. He's like, it seems like it's going to be, you're never going to know who's going to be in that car.
You know, it's a funny turn of events in this second Coyne car run to Fittipaldi's unfortunate injury. Who's still planning to come back by mid-Ohio, but I happen to be sitting, near a few people who were talking to IndyCar PR man Arnie Schrippen earlier, and Arnie had mentioned that Pietro was supposed to get an F1 test at some point this summer. Instead of getting an F1 test, a potential F1 driver is now driving his car. So a little ironic twist there. Mike, had you heard of this guy before today?
I have heard of him. I knew he was a reserve driver for Haas F1, and he's an American with a very Italian-sounding name. And I had no idea, never in my wildest dreams did I think he would be driving an Indy car, although if he did, it would be for an organization like Coyne, who kind of picks drivers' names out of a hat and signs them up at times.
Yeah, I think Jess and I made the same Italian-sounding name joke before. You'd think this guy came direct from Italy and not Connecticut. But right. Moving on, let me go to my notes page here. Let's go with Mike, your thoughts, and then Jess, your thoughts. It's been a little bit of a strange week of practice. Teams, for the most part, kind of struggling with the new aero kit and really how to make it work in traffic and make it work in general. I think bumping is going to be, not just two guys who we think it's going to be. So, Mike, I'll turn it over to you first for any potential thoughts on how practice has been this week, and then I'm going to put you on the spot, and you're going to predict who the two drivers bumped are.
Okay. I thought it was a very odd week. Usually during this week of practice, there's one driver who just seems to stand out, and it's just is very strong and very consistent day to day to day. And we didn't really see that. Simon Pagenaud led the first day, and then we pretty much never heard from him again. It's odd that Marco Andretti led 2 days, yet he didn't seem to be really a dominant force throughout practice. The toe speeds do not reflect the top speeds of any driver. So it's just been a very, very strange week. I think the new car has a lot to do with that. Everybody is still learning it, as we heard every day in press conferences, that everyone is still struggling with some aspects of the new car on this track.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in it being a weird week. Guys who are at the top one day or towards the bottom on the next day. I tried, like you and I mentioned earlier, tried to pay attention to the no toe speeds more than anything today. But even then, you had, it was a Penske and Ed Carpenter show for the most part in the non-toe rankings. But I guess I'll say the one guy who seemed pretty consistent all week is, again, Robert Wickens. Continues for the most part to, his non-toe ranking today was, let's see here,
10th.
It was 10th. Yep. So he's right in that top 10 spot where he's been all day. Jess, I'll turn it over. Oh, before I turn it over to Jess, Mike, you have to predict your two guys getting bumped tomorrow.
Okay. Well, in the middle of the day, that kind of changed. I definitely think Connor Daly is going to get bumped, and right now, I think it's going to be James Davison as the other one.
I think that's fair. For those who haven't been able to tune in, Davison had a hard crash in turn 2, I think, and the car went airborne, but James is okay, and it looks like the tub of the car is okay, and even the track buddy Bob Lazier was at the Bilardi, Foyt, Bird, Hollinger garage stall, offering parts and any assistance with his car parts and tub just a couple blocks down the street here. Jess, I'll turn it over to you. I know you haven't been able to tune in as much as Mike and I have here, but any thoughts? And then your two guys to get bumped.
My only thought, I think, is to say I don't necessarily think that the bumping is going to be because the car in question doesn't have the speed. I feel like it's going to be a game of nerves, because this is the first time that drivers have had to worry about it for a few years. So I'm thinking that we might see somebody make, a little error here, a little error there, and throw themselves out of the ball game. As far as predictions, man, that is putting me on the spot. I don't know. Davison is going to be interesting to see if they can get that car piece back together and get him back out there. I think he has the potential to stay in it. I think Jack Harvey might have troubles getting in. I think Pippa Mann is going to have troubles getting in.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I'm gonna pull. I'm gonna go with. I don't want to call it a sleeper to get bumped. I don't really think that makes any sense. But if it doesn't, I'm gonna make it make sense. I think Jess hit the nail on the head, and we really don't know what's gonna happen. It might be a game of nerves. It might be somebody who just. Changes something tonight and gets a little too aggressive. So I'm going to go, let's see here. I think my guess is I'm going to go with Clement DeMello, although he had a good day yesterday, but for the most part, it's been at the bottom all week. And then a surprise in, I guess it's not so much a surprise. I think Kyle Kaiser is the other one that's kind of my gut feeling. But you never know. It could be somebody who's a power team and just has bad luck or bad nerves and gets caught out there. But that's just my guess there. So let's move on here. Question for both of you guys. We have some different. This is a fan question from somebody who walked by me in the fan village, and honestly, I forgot to write down who it was. So if you're listening, sorry, I forgot your name. Best livery on a car for the month of May, and coincidentally the worst, and that could be somebody who's a full-time guy that you just really don't like. Jess, I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Of course. So I'm going to go, so worst, I kind of complained about it before, the Penske 3, no, they're not the same this time. What am I talking about? Never mind. I lied. I'm not going to go with that. I like Elio's car. I love the yellow. So I think that the yellow is, it's going to be so easy to pick him out, I think it's nice. And I have said it before, and I guess I'll say it again. Scott Dixon's PNC car, I'm not a huge fan of that color scheme, so I'll say it's the worst.
All right. I'll jump in here instead of putting Mike on the spot. In terms of favorites, I'm a big fan of Rossi's Napa scheme with the stars and stripes going down the side. I think it's pretty cool. Let me pick out another one here. Wickens adding a little bit of extra red on the side pods there is probably my runner-up. In terms of the least favorite, I know this isn't the popular opinion. I think a lot of people on Twitter liked his livery at the start of the year. Of course, now I can't find his name here. Let me see where it is. Oh, Gabby Chavez. I'm not really a fan of the Harding. I like the Harding blue. I just don't like how the sides of the car kind of look like a duck. Just my opinion. I guess we're being nice to Gabby because he's a good dude, and I don't want him to threaten me with anything. My other least favorite. I do have one issue with James Davison's livery. I love the red with the black wing, but the black writing on the car makes it impossible to read when it's going 200 plus miles an hour. So, just my opinion. We'll see. Slightly off topic from the 500 here, but I'm going to bring it back into the 500, as I'm sure most people have seen. Sports betting is now legal everywhere. I'm sure we'll see some poker website sponsor motorsports at some point in the near future here. So I'm going to put a betting question in here. Would you bet? I'll answer this first. We'll switch it up. I'll put myself on the spot. Somebody asked me this in the media center yesterday. Would you bet $5 on Helio winning his fourth 500 or a rookie winning their first? And I'm gonna put $5 on Robert Wickens. He's shown the pace, and he's been consistent all week long for the most part. So I guess the question was more a rookie in general winning their first, and since there's 4 or 5 rookies in the 500 this year, I'm gonna take that one. So Jess, you're up.
Oh, let's see. God, I don't know. Why do you always put me on the spot first?
Technically, I put you on the spot second. I put myself on the spot first.
Well, yeah, but you knew what the question was.
That's a good point. Well, you knew what the question was too. I do. Listen, for the listeners out there, we do share show notes before the show starts, so you were aware of the question.
You hush your mouth. You don't tell them our secrets.
just so everybody knows what Jess is getting at there, she just admitted I was right.
I didn't say you were right. I said don't be sharing our secrets. I didn't say any such thing as you were right. You know better than that. Wickens is hard to argue. I mean, on that point, you might be right.
So what about the Helio? Would you take a rookie or would you take Helio?
Oh gosh. I think I would take Elio because I think that he has more to prove, if that makes sense. After being
Yep.
out of it,
Yep.
and he's got to come back and I don't necessarily think he needs to prove himself, but he's got to come back and make a showing. He wants to put on a good show for the fans, and he loves it just as much as we do. And I think that he's going to have a good race.
Yeah, I can't disagree there. He's definitely been strong all week. Before we move on, I'll turn it over to Mike for his Helio or a rookie $5.
Okay. I would feel safer putting the money on Elio in this field. Wickens has admitted that there are things he still doesn't have experience with. It showed at St. Pete on that last restart. He admitted after the Grand Prix that he'd never done a fuel-saving race before, and that hurt him. So I would think Elio would be the safer bet there.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that one. All right, let's see here. I guess, I have to bring it up because it's been talked about up and down pit lane all week. Our team's sandbagging. Is somebody holding back speed at all? I'm going to go with no. I don't think teams are really sandbagging. What do you have to gain by sandbagging, especially in a year where you have a brand new aero kit? I'll keep it at that. I'll keep this topic short and simple and turn it over to either of you guys.
Mike, you go first.
Okay. I don't think anybody is. It sure doesn't look like it this time. There have been times when certain prominent teams have been known to do that, especially early in practice. But I haven't really seen it this week. For instance, when Pagano led day one and then disappeared, I don't know that anybody can hide anything or fool anybody with this new package. From what I've heard, all the drivers say is everybody is still trying to figure so much stuff out. I don't see how that can play into the equation this year.
I agree with the no. I don't think they are sandbagging. I don't think there's much of a point in it. There hasn't been in quite a few years. I think, this is the first year that there would have been a reason to, because you don't want to give away where you really are because people are going to get bumped. However, like you said, with the new package, they really needed to test it and push it and see what they could do. And so I just don't think that they have been sandbagging.
Yeah, I agree. Let me see here. Before we come up with a trivia question, and the winner of the trivia question can, if you're local or want to come, can win 2 tickets to Carb Day or 2 tickets to the public drivers meeting on Saturday morning. Your choice. You just have to let me know. Or if you're not going to be here, we'll work something out. But I'll get to the question in a second here. I wanted to go slightly off topic. I don't know if either of you guys watched the Kentucky Derby a couple weeks last weekend, or the weekend before. Obviously on NBC. So I tuned in, and I think the Indy 500 is in great hands when we go to NBC next year. They're pre-race. You call the Kentucky Derby a race, right? It was fantastic. The pageantry and all that stuff in the Kentucky Derby is a little bit over my head, but they talked about a lot of different things and really broke it down for everybody to understand. So I think the coverage is pretty cool. I don't know if either of you guys saw it and can comment on that, but I wanted to throw a little shout out to Team NBC for a fantastic effort, and I think it's going to bode very well for IndyCar.
I agree. I did watch it, and I watch it every year, and they just do an incredible job. The pre-race is so in-depth and covers just every aspect of the event, and if that's what they're going to do for the 500, this will be just fantastic. Cannot wait for next year.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jess, any thoughts?
I too watch it every year, and yes, it is called a race. So yes, I love their coverage. I think it's fantastic. I think that it shows kind of the nitty gritty. I think that's what people who maybe haven't watched the 500 before, or who are not in general IndyCar fans, but just want to watch the 500 because it's the 500. I think that's what they need to do to make sure that the general audience is gonna kind of understand and maybe pick a favorite driver that they want to follow the rest of the season. And I think that it can only do positive things for the series.
Yes. All right, let's get to the trivia question here. Now, obviously, we've come to know, the Indy 500 on a Sunday, but that was not always the case. So I'll make this a two-part trivia question, and the first person to answer can pick which tickets they want. The second person to get the other answer can get the other tickets. The 1911 Indy 500, the first one, did not start on a Sunday. Can you name me what day of the week it started? And then the second part of that is it switched to Sunday permanently in what year? It's much later than I realized, and Mike or Jess, if you know, send me a text message, and let's leave this one completely up to the listeners to tune in. But we'll also tweet out the trivia question for those who may be busy. Let's see here. Jess, is there anything you want to bring up?
Well, we already kind of covered a couple of the things that I was going to bring up. Let me think here. How about we had kind of discussed it a little bit. We didn't update our numbers, but how about comparing last year's speeds and this year's speeds, and how we think that's going to bode in the race?
Yeah, it's interesting. As of a completed second day of practice, the speeds were up. Last year, the top guy was, of course I don't have that spreadsheet open on my computer right now. I think it was Jay Howard was the fastest after 2 days last year, and he ran a 227 or 226.
226, yeah.
And Marco was the quickest after 2 days this year with a 227. Now, what I'm going to do in the meantime is pull up Indy 500 Fast Friday 2017 and compare Fast Friday times. So we saw, the top three guys all over 231 this year. And last year, Sebastian Bourdais was the quickest at 233. However, the weather situation was much different today than it was last year, although it did rain on Fast Friday last year, so there was a 2-hour break in the middle of the day. Ryan Hunter-Reay was over 230 last year. Bourdais, as I mentioned, Kanaan, Hunter-Reay was at 232 and had a non-tow speed of 231, which is a couple miles an hour, 2 miles an hour quicker than Will Power's 229 this year. So earlier in the week, I thought speeds would be up based on the first couple days. Now, with the no-tow speeds and the boost, I think they might be down a mile per hour or two because, the car is a little bit tougher to drive. I think it was Oriol Servia ran about 3 laps and came in, and he had a tire that looked like it had been out there for 60 laps. So I'll get your guys' thoughts on what do you think. I don't think it's a bad thing at all that the car is tougher to drive here. It's going to make for some interesting situations. And before I go on, I'll turn it over to you guys.
I don't think in the race it's going to make a whole lot of difference. Tomorrow it could be interesting to see. I know, rain is threatening, of course. And I kind of feel like it does every year. That's just Indianapolis in the month of May. But I don't think that it's going to be bad at all. I have to agree with you again. What is going on? I have to agree again that I think that having a tougher car to drive might make a better race, even if the speeds are down slightly.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Jess, on that. I know they are lifting a bit in the corners with these cars because they are so tough to drive. And I did expect the speeds to be down, and the consensus is the full speed will probably be in the 228, 229 range this year because of that. But I think speeds will eventually go up as the teams figure out the nuances of this new car, and by next year or the year after, we'll see the speeds back up in the 230s for its whole.
Yeah, I might even say that you might see faster times tomorrow afternoon if teams withdraw their entries and go back out for another qualifying run. Tomorrow will be a big tell of that. But I think you'll see a lot more guys than normal, go back out for a better qualifying run. Obviously, especially because bumping is back this year, but as they might figure out something with the car, with a teammate's car, and they might try something different. Jess, it's funny you mentioned Indiana weather always being crazy, and it finally started to rain at the track as I look out the window here. Moving on, let me see here. So, speaking of, passing, it's been a hot debate this year. Every press conference, after a day of qualifying, every driver's pretty much said something different. How they feel about the car, how they feel about speed and passing, and et cetera, and et cetera. So, Jess, I'm going to do your favorite thing and put you on the spot first here. Do you think, how do you think the race is going to play out based on, 4 days of practice and a couple days of testing last week, or a couple weeks ago? And, what do you think is most important? Do you think track position is going to be most important, or do you think having the right setup is going to be most important?
I think the right setup is going to be most important. Like I said before, Indiana weather can be a beast during the month of May. You never know what you're going to get. So I think having a good setup on race day is gonna be kind of everything. Obviously with a race this long, fuel strategy and pit strategy, different things like that are gonna play into it. So where you start isn't necessarily as important as in a shorter race. But yeah, I think even if there's less passing, I don't think the race is going to lack in excitement. I think this is going to be one heck of a race. Like I said, especially with the cars being harder to drive, I think it's going to make it more exciting to watch, even if we don't have, 80 some odd passes in the race.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. You have been that is exactly pretty much what I wanted to say. I think it was either Willpower this morning or somebody else at the end of the day yesterday, I can't remember, who said there's going to be a large amount of passing at the beginning of the pack, and when you start getting mid-pack, it's obviously going to be tough, just like it's always been tough at Indy. And I think that's why your car setup is going to be so important, because if you qualify poorly or qualify mid-pack, but you have a great car setup, you can, with how hard these cars are to drive, there is no reason why you can't come up through the field. If you catch somebody going too wide in a corner, you can, sneak under them or get them on a. There's been plenty of passing going out of turn 4 into the straightaway this year so far in practice. So, Mike, I'll turn it over to you for your thoughts on that.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. Setup is going to be very, very important this year. It's the sense I'm getting from the drivers is the car that's set up better to get through the corners better is going to have the most success. And this race, the last few years, it doesn't really matter where you start. You can always get to the front, but setup is really extremely important this year. I think toward the end of the race, track position might come into play depending on how the yellows fall. And also, I think we might have some tire management going on as well. You were talking about the tires you saw the other day, but I was in the pits yesterday during a yellow, and I noticed Servia's tires on the left side, the outside edge was just totally worn off on the left front and left rear.
Yeah, you make a very good point there. So slightly changing gears here, I'm going to talk a little bit about Indy Lights before the Freedom 100. Obviously, as you know, Chris Windom is coming up from the dirt track racing, and also Davey Hamilton Jr. is making his return to Indy Lights in a one-off effort for Team Pelfrey. I know we don't talk about a ton of Indy Lights stuff here, but I wanted to bring it up because it's always a fantastic race. It's and in every Indy Lights race this year has been very good. So we're gonna pick a winner here between the three of us, and the person who has the last place finisher is going to have to buy beers next weekend. I made that up off the top of my head. And Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot first.
Okay. For the Freedom 100,
yes,
I would go with Rudia.
Okay. Jess?
Wyndham.
Wyndham? All right. I kind of figured you were going to go that route. Oh, man. Now that I put myself in the spot, I don't know who I want to pick.
You even knew the question.
I even yeah, I know, and this one wasn't on the show notes. Let's go with and I'll make the announcement next week on the show is Bilardi driver and painter extraordinaire Aaron Telitz. And because Aaron's going to be on the show next week, I'm gonna pick him. Although I think the Indy Lights field, despite being 7 or 8 cars, is phenomenally strong for the most part. So we shall see. I wish both of you no luck, but I do want Chris Windom to finish well because I think that would be a fantastic story, and to kind of keep his career going in an upward trajectory and maybe get him into the Indy 500 one day, similar to Brian Clausen a couple years ago. So somebody brought up to me in the Gasoline Alley, our buddy Jake Neely, that he wanted Buddy Lazier out on track, and he was a little bit sad about that. Buddy's a nice guy. I think it's the right move to wait. I've heard maybe Buddy will be back next year when they have money and a repaired tub. But I think it's time for Buddy to focus on his son, who is a 15 or 16 Flynn Lazier, I believe. And from what I've read, he's a good driver. And at some point or another, we'll be racing in Indy 500. So, Jess and Mike, do you think it's time for Buddy to become a coach/owner, or do you want to see him back on the track next year?
I think in all fairness, I'd like to see him back just one more time. That way he gets to, have the retirement race. But at the same time, he does need to step back. It's time.
Yeah, I agree. It is time for him to get out of the car, and he's been just barely making 500 every year that he comes back, and he's been away from a full-time effort for so long that I think it's time to start prepping his son to get into IndyCar.
Yeah, I think you both make good points, and slightly touching on that and going back to Indy Lights, I overheard some people very worried about Indy Lights only being 7 cars, and if you go to motorsportstribune.com, my man Chris DeHardy, who right now is sitting right in front of where Mike is sitting in the media center here, wrote a great article on why the Indy Lights will be fine. We have Carlin, who will be back next year. Juncos had 2 guys until Alfonso Celis decided to go to Road America, so we'll see on that one. And I think some of these Pro Mazda drivers are going to have to come up. Parker Thompson's probably going to win the championship, and there's a couple other fantastic drivers down there. So I don't think anybody has anything to worry about with Indy Lights. I'll get your guys' thoughts on it.
No, I don't think so either. This year was with all the teams that moved up to IndyCar and decided to drop their Indy Lights program, which I think was a good move, so they could focus on IndyCar this year and get established. And but what we really need is more IndyCar owners to get involved in it. I mean, Michael Andretti has half the field this year, and that is not sustainable. So we need more involvement from the IndyCar teams themselves, and they can be rewarded with extra test days by the series for having a team. There's got to be some incentive, but I also think that the Indy Lights series itself should have more value for the top 3 finishers, not just for the winner. Yes, give the winner his million, but give a little money to the 2nd and 3rd place finisher too, to help them move along a little quicker as well.
It's an interesting idea. And before I turn over to Jess, I'm going to pop in with what I overheard our pal Robin Miller saying the other day, in that he thinks IndyCar teams should only get Leaders Circle money if they have at least an Indy Lights car. I'm not agreeing with the idea. I'm just proposing what's called a radical idea. I don't think I necessarily agree with it. I think I like Mike's solution more than Robin Miller. Thankfully, Robin Miller can't hear me all the way in the back here. But I'll turn it over.
Go get him.
Yeah, he was very nice when I talked to him earlier, but he probably doesn't want to hear what I just said now.
Right.
Jess, I'll turn it over to you for any thoughts. If not, Mike's suggestion of prize money for the top 3 is going to be our winning choice out of this.
Yeah, prize money for the top 3 would be helpful for sure. And I also like rewarding them with maybe test day, like you said. I think that'd be a good idea. But honestly, you have to, I mean, at least in my opinion, I would look at it as, a nice way to bring up your own drivers. That way you could train them the way that your team works and the way that things want to go with you. Just like, NASCAR has the Xfinity series, and most of the teams that we'll call them the big teams in the big cars have an Xfinity car also, and kind of just they develop their drivers from a younger age, and I think that would be extremely helpful if teams would start to look at that as a potential also.
I think that's a fantastic idea. Moving on, Mike or Jess, is there anything that you would like to bring up as we approach the 40-minute mark here?
I didn't get to share my best and worst livery.
Oh, I can go. You go for it, and then we'll go on to something else.
Okay. Well, the one I really like this year is the 24 car, Karam's car with the Wix filters livery. I think that is really sharp. I love the design of that. The one I really don't like, and I've never liked the livery on this car, is the GoDaddy car. It's always dislike that garish shade of green. It really does not do anything for me. And those are the two, my favorite, my least favorite.
I think that's fair. You're from everything I've heard, everybody seems to love the Danica green. Jess, we went 40 minutes without bringing up Danica on the week of the 500. That's pretty impressive.
What?
But I do agree. I wish they did a little bit more with it other than just green.
Yeah.
Green and number 13. We shall see if that's lucky for Danica or very unlucky, as it now looks like the speedway is flooding outside. Don't worry, I'm not going to become a weatherman in my spare time, because the weather guys did not get today's forecast particularly correct. We're at the 40-minute mark here. Just a quick shout out to SoundQ Audio for sponsoring us again this week. SoundQ's owner is a Formula Renault driver, I believe, Juan Arenas. So thank you for the support there, and make sure to check out our guest here, Mike's blog on wildfireradiosports.com, where you can also listen to our show Fridays 3:15 to 4:15. If you tuned in this week, you heard last week's episode on repeat since we weren't able to record last night. And Mike, do you have a website that people can check out the blog in addition to Wildfire Radio, or is Wildfire the go-to source?
Wildfire is the go-to source, and I put it out on my Twitter and Facebook lines when I do publish an article, so people will know to go there.
And your Twitter is share your Twitter handle, because I can't remember it.
Okay. It's at Tutor Indy, TUTORINDIE.
Perfect. Thank you very much, sir. And you can find all SoundQ stuff, social media-wise, at SoundQ Audio. I hope to have Mr. Arenas on the show at some point, but I know he's traveling the globe doing business stuff. We shall see. And before we get to our pitfalls, there was one other fan question that popped up. A guy who is putting together all sorts of neat IndyCar data in fancy graphs that look really cool. His Twitter handle is at Michael_Gaithers, GAETHERS. And what we've talked about in this episode and talked about all over the speedway is toe speed versus non-toe speed, and what the heck does that mean. Thank you to Mr. Arnie Shribben again for clarifying that. No toe speed is when you are at least 7 seconds on the track behind the car in front of you. So that is the delta that you need to be. If you are within 7 seconds, you are considered drafting off the guy in front of you, and you get the toe speed. So just a little fun educational fact as we wrap up here that I never really thought of how far back you needed to be. Time for the pitfalls. Mike, if you have a pitfall you'd like to include, feel free. I'll let Jess start, and since Jess and I talked yesterday, my pitfall has changed. So I hope you guys are ready for a good one.
I'm ready.
Oh, no. Okay, so my pitfall is a little bit weak this week, but it bothers me to see people complaining all the time about silly things. So everybody begged and pleaded, and oh my God, please let there be bumping, and I can't, I can't wait to have bumping and blah, blah, blah. And now everybody is kind of flipping the switch, and it's like, well, oh my God, it's going to be so hard to get in the race. Like, what if my driver doesn't make it in? Well, that's what bumping is all about, and that's what you asked for, and that's what you got, so stop complaining.
That is definitely fair. I can't disagree with that one. Mike, would you like to contribute or share your thoughts? If you don't want to pitfall anybody, which is fine, I will. I'll take over.
Okay. My pitfall this occurred during the Grand Prix. For every practice session, and they even doing it during the practice sessions this week, at the top of the pylon they have the time remaining. But during qualifications for the Grand Prix, they did not have the time of each round up there. And they didn't have it on the video boards or anywhere, so I thought that was kind of a disservice to the fans in the stands, not being able to see how much time was left in each round of qualifying.
Yeah,
I
especially.
don't understand why they can't have it there when they have it for every other session.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Just dropping in with some breaking news before I get to ours. Thank you to David Malsher, who happens to be sitting next to me all week. Spoke to David Bird for a while this afternoon and thinks a change in the wind direction was the cause for James Davison's big crash. It doesn't look like James changed anything, with this in-car, setup. So it looks like, just bad luck. But David Bird did say the tub's fine, the engine is fine, and most of the parts are okay. And he did give a shout out to Bob Lazier for some help. It's going to be a long night for them. I hope they have lots of coffee. My pitfall, let me pull it up here, is F1. I know I feel like I kind of pitfall F1 every week, but I think right now they deserve it. Liberty Media is considering, it's not definite, making every F1 track repave their surface to make tire wear greater in an effort to improve racing in 2019. Let me pause before I go on a really long rant here. Let me see, where do I want to start? So I believe it was Barcelona just repaved their track either this year or last year, and it was cost 2.6 million euros, I think. If I got the currency wrong, it's still a ton of money. So you're going to make that track pay twice within a 2-year span of a couple $1 million. Some of these tracks, if they're going to do some sort of repaving, may not be able to host a smaller race series. They might have to say no, especially with F1's insane sanctioning fees of $22.5 million. I don't see how in any way, shape, or form this makes. I mean, if I was a track, I would just say, see you later, F1. Maybe outside of Monaco or one of the bigger ones, but I don't think it's a good idea at all. It's not going to help F1 improve. So I will turn it over to either of you guys if you have any thoughts on that one before we wrap it up.
I'll
throw
think
Brian
that's
Simpson.
the way to go. Okay. I don't think that's the way to go. But go ahead, Jess.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So I will agree with what he was trying to say. I don't think that's the way to go. I'll make it short and sweet so he can put his 2 cents in too. I remember very clearly when Indianapolis Diamond ground their track the way that F1 didn't want, and none of the cars ran. So that was because of tire degradation. So now they want to make it so the tires degrade. Like, that doesn't make any sense, F1. You are just killing me.
Exactly. Repaving the track isn't the way. If you want more tire wear, work with the tire company and make a compound that wears. That makes a lot more sense than having every track repaved. That's almost as bad as Bernie's water cannons idea, in my mind.
I honestly had never read about that story until earlier today, and I think everybody sitting around me was wondering why I was laughing. Wrapping up again, make sure to listen to the show on wildfireradiosports.com, our fantastic radio network host, and you can also find Mike's blog on there. Get your In J Fry We Trust t-shirts while you can. I have some with me here if you'd like them. A bunch sold to somebody who I have to keep anonymous until you see them wearing them at the track tomorrow. But it will be a good photo I'll try to get. But I got a couple left with me and plenty more on order back in my house, so get your order in. I have about maybe 8 or 10 left, and that's all that's going to be available unless there's some crazy demand, which would be really cool. Again, it's the In J Fry We Trust shirts. You can find the picture on our social media at Pit Lane Parlay. And tune in next week. We're going to be recording a couple days earlier than normal, so I may put out the show earlier. I may just hold it for Carb Day, Friday afternoon, although I think most of you who are IndyCar fans might be drinking a little too much to remember to listen on Friday. So maybe we'll do something special. Maybe we'll even do a live stream on when we have Mr. Telitz on the show here. Unless you guys have anything else, I think we can wrap it up.
I wanted to point out too that Mike, you kind of forgot. I'm going to be in town. I decided to fly in next Saturday for the race, and Mike and I are thinking about doing a live show someplace in Indy.
Yes. Anybody who has any suggestions, we tried Daredevil Brewery last night as a test, but the acoustics in there weren't working too well. Hence why we had to record on, what is a rainy Friday night instead of last night. So any suggestions are more than welcome, especially if it's at a place that has beer available. That would make my Saturday night. Or, Jessica and Saturday perfect. We'll make it a special episode. Maybe we'll live stream it depending on where we are. And, we'll turn it over from there. If there's nothing else, Mike, thank you very much for joining us this Friday evening. If anybody happens to be at the track...
Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. If anybody happens to be at the track this weekend, I will be rocking my Pit Lane Parlay hat and In J Fry We Trust shirt tomorrow. So, come say hello, talk about the show or talk about the race. Met a bunch of people already in the couple days here, so thank you everybody very much. And Jess, I will let you sign it off.
And guys, keep your lug nuts tight.